How do we really connect with somebody? How do we really talk with them, listen to them, understand what's going through their head? No one really teaches us that, but that's what we're going to be talking to you today about on the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast. Today we're going to get into it pretty deep, and I'm going to end it with the most powerful question that you can ask somebody. And my guest today is going to start off with improv, storytelling, but what we're really going to do is dig in on how to apply these techniques into a conversation. Get away from the PowerPoint. Get away from just good questions, which are critical, but really get into what the other person is thinking. What are they really going to do? We're really going to dig into it. I'm going to end it with probably the most powerful question that you'll ever ask. And it'll give you the answers that you really want to know, and that your client doesn't even know they should be giving you. It's really powerful. So stay tuned. I think you're really going to like the interview. Make sure you're checking out Co-Video, though. Video email is cutting through the noise. You got to be checking out. Video is the thing to do today. So make sure you tell them Brian sent you. covideo.com. Also, Pipe Drive with the coupon code Brutal Truth gets you 60 days free. Connects up with your email, connects up with your calendar. You get automatically a calendar link built in, and it's enterprise ready, and it's a CRM that we all can use, no matter what you have to use at the office. Let's get into the interview, and I'll sum it up at the end. Hey, just one warning. A little bit into the interview, my guest moved away from the microphone, so the voice gets a little faint, but I chatted in the chat box and got her closer to the microphone. It's only for less than a minute, so please be patient, and it'll come right back. Here we go. Hey, Kathy, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So my company is keepingithuman.com. And what I do is I help teams, sales and marketing teams, and sometimes product teams, find a way to say yes to customers. So what that really means is it's a lot of strategy. It's also a lot of using my 20 plus years of improvisation, which is all about how do we say yes to move ideas, people, and organizations forward.
And how'd you get into it?
Oh my gosh. Well, I spent about 15 years in tech. Running, tech marketing. In Silicon Valley, running, launching products, managing teams, PR teams, marketing teams, and about 25 years doing improvisation, which I still do, and I still teach. So I still perform and teach. And, there's really no better tool in all my years of just business. Everything I learned about moving organizations and people forward really came from the stage, which is ironic because I didn't learn that in business. I learned it down on the stage.
Yeah. And why is improv so powerful in business to business or sales or marketing?
Yeah. Improvisation is about collaboration. Yeah. And, it's a big buzzword. Everyone's like, collaborate. And I laugh because we all know it's important. You and I both know, and everybody that listens probably has had a mandate in their company, or even if they're an entrepreneur, they've had a conversation about collaboration. And yet organizations find it so hard to actually do the collaborating. And I think where I really learned the power of what collaboration could be is on an improv stage. I mean, we are literally, if you're familiar with Whose Line Is It Anyway, it's a lot like that. The reason we can create something in real time is because we yes and each other. We don't argue about an idea. We just add on to an idea. We accept it and we laugh and we work together and we have each other's backs. And I've never seen anything like it. And I remember the first few years I was doing improv, and I remember thinking, like, the light bulb went on, and I thought, not only do I love this as an art form, but man, the power of what this could be to transform business. Now, this was 20-something years ago, and I think now business is catching up and going, maybe there's something to this idea.
Yeah, because I guess today too many people are playing roles instead of connecting with other people.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
And how did you decide to come out on your own as opposed to sticking with the corporate thing or trying your hand at comedy or show business?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because right after college, I jumped into stand-up, and I was working full-time, and 6 nights a week, I was hitting either a stand-up stage or an improv stage. And, I was parallel pathing it for many years, and I was bringing these concepts into business. And at one point I realized, I had my son, and I went, I don't think I can go back, because what I know really belongs in business. And rather than sort of just put it in there and, forgiveness is easier to get than permission, which I always seem to manage to get. Forgiveness. I thought, this is ridiculous. I really need to do something with this, because what I've learned is not only just fun and human and it's real. This is just probably the best, training ground for just, human interaction that I've ever had. So let's, after the baby's, a certain age, we're going to just do our own thing. And that was 10 years ago. And I've never gone back. So
what does it look like when you go into a company? It must be first hard to sell this or convince people to do it. Or is it? I don't know. I've never tried.
Well, it's interesting. Yes and no. So here's the thing. I've never gotten a call, Brian. It's never
no inbound.
Nobody calls me and goes, "Hey, you know what, Kathy? You got to get here quick because my improv is busted. Could you come and fix my improv?"
We need a bid on your improv.
Please, improv is hot. Would you please? Everybody here is begging for more improv, more cowbell and more improv. I wish that was happening. That's not it. However, the calls that I get are, look, our sales team doesn't really know how to use stories. They don't know how to make the sell collaborative and interactive with the buyer. And those terms, those buzzwords are all things that improv is good at, improv tools. And I don't mean performing, but the whole idea of saying yes and moving the conversation forward. That to me tips me off that, wow, maybe some tools from improv could help the sales team or the marketing team or whatever. So yeah, it's really which is sales, and you know this, and all your listeners know this so well. I mean, it's all about listening. So it's the words they're using. They're not using improv. They are using words like, I have to collaborate better with the buyers, and I have to learn to be a better storyteller. And my team is struggling with storytelling. And then they'll say, is that something that you can help with? And I'm like, well, I think we can do something here.
And what does it typically look like when you get there? Is it really stiff and overly polished? And
yeah, it's interesting. I've walked into some companies that I think are really so close, and they're talented people. They just need a few little tweaks and tools, because they're experts. They're experts in their buyer, and I'm not. I just bring the process. And then I come into organizations where they're really struggling because the sales script or the sales training that they got was literally from another era, literally from this old school of aggressive selling. And this, I mean, this is your area of expertise. It's like, and I don't have to, I think convince your listeners too hard. I think there are people who just got sales training that was not the right thing for where people are at today, and it doesn't work. And so it's all over the map. Some people really are close, and then some teams really just need a little bit of a roadmap, because we talk a lot about, for example, storytelling in sales, and yet if I'm a salesperson and I'm not trained, it's a really valid question, which is, all right, Kathy, how do I know when I should use a story? How do I know when to tell a story? We never talk about storytelling prompts, or when you launch into a story, or how you do it. So I think a lot of times the roadmap and the training looks really, really different depending on what's going on with the organization.
And that's it. And I think too many people say, oh, that person's funny, or that person's a great storyteller. Like it's some innate, like their height or their hair color or their eye color.
Right.
Versus something that is acquired and polished and adapted and learned.
Yeah. There are people who are just great storytellers, and it can be learned. That's the beauty of it. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I really believe, look, humans are, we're storytelling animals, all of us, and we can all learn to be better. I really believe that's the thing. And if I didn't, well, then I'm in the wrong business. And I really fundamentally believe that we can all evolve our skills there, and you can learn. And I've seen people learn, and I've seen people do some amazing things to where, before they were so their handicap was like, I'm thinking golf here. Their handicap was like having to have a PowerPoint presentation. And I've seen them, which is great because now I've met people who, after training, don't need the slides, right? The slides are a crutch. The slides don't help anybody. In fact, I think the slides hurt you. Yeah. And instead, I've seen people just throw away the slides and really have these really direct, honest conversations with the customer. Well, what do you need? Let's talk about what you need. Let's see if we can do it and see if maybe together here, we'll co-create a plan together. We'll collaborate on something and walk away with something either we won't, or we'll get close and use that as a starting point. And that's been a really amazing evolution to see people drop the script.
And that's it, because I think questions are super powerful, but I hear so many reps talk about how to handle objections. And my view is always like, why don't you work on preventing objections? Meaning when you get an objections, you tend to be asking for something you haven't earned yet.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think it's so true. If there's resistance for a reason, probably because you're trying to ram it down somebody's throat. And and it's like, I always laugh. It's like, you gotta romance me before you reach for my wallet. Like if you're going for my marketing pants, like you need to back up. Yeah. Like you don't shake hands with somebody and then like, hey, how can we get you in this? It's like, whoa, buddy, first take me to dinner. And it's like, we need to have the real conversation of, if you are overcoming objections, you're right. You're 100% right. Then maybe you have not established enough value to really earn that. And then the question is, well, why is that? What's happening there? And I think if you can just drop objections for a minute, just drop objections, and really in your next meeting with a client, make it a discovery call. Yeah. Where you don't have to put the pressure of trying to make a sale, but you say, hey, let's talk about what you need and what we offer. Let's see if there's a match. And if I tell you some stories about similar types of clients that we've helped, would this make sense for us to, create a possible solution and map it out a couple of steps today? That's so non-committal and that's so non-threatening. And I feel like that is just a much more collaborative way to operate.
That's it. And what are your thoughts about, I've been studying a lot about this inner mindset versus outer mindset, inner mindset being looking at the world solely from your vantage point, where outer mindset is having empathy, sympathy, being able to project what your clients are facing every day and kind of talk to what they care about.
Yeah, it's exactly that. I think overcoming objections comes from I got to make a quota mentality. Yeah, right. And I get it. Like, hey, we've all been there. We've all had like sales objectives, and certainly when I was running marketing in tech, it's like I worked with the sales team, and we had objectives we had to hit. However, when you drop the objective and you're really focused on like what is in their day, and if you're sitting across from a decision maker, the biggest thing you have to remember, this is where empathy makes such a difference, and thinking like an improviser, because you have to remember that they feel risk. They feel risk. They feel a level of job risk, and they feel a level of personal risk. So if they were to move forward with you and they're not convinced yet, and just as an example, just take it to the worst place scenario, you screw up, not only is their job in jeopardy, but now their personal reputation and credibility has been compromised. So you have to understand, if you put yourself in their shoes and go, you know what, I recognize you're feeling some risk right now, because that's a big commitment to make. So maybe we talk about a smaller project, scope it down. That way you can test it and see if it works, and then we can scale later. Then you go from selling to, how do I reduce my buyer's risk and still provide value? And that's a completely different mind shift.
And how does an improver, is that the right thing?
Yes, and it's whatever you want it to be. It's yes.
There you go. It's just aligning and moving forward. It's kind of like verbal judo, or?
It kind of is, although I'd like to think everybody's in on it. And so I think, there's no, we're not doing judo on, we're co-creating it together. So, if somebody, it's really about yes and moving forward this idea of, yes, that's what I'd like to do. So if you and I are talking and you say, hey, well, you know what, I've only got this small budget, I can do a test, let's worry about scaling it later. I say, yes, and what I hear is that you want to reduce your risk. So here's what I can do for you. I can do 1, 2, or 3 things. And you tell me which one of these is the highest priority. Now I'm yes anding. I'm acknowledging that, all right, there's a risk here, and I'm going to work within the parameters you've just said. So everything you say, I yes, and I add on my idea. Now I'm moving the conversation forward rather than trying to ram and overcome your objectives. I'm saying, I hear you. I hear you. Risk is important for you to make. And and that's truly what improv really is. It's about, instead of me arguing your idea, my idea,
that's the word.
You know what I mean? It's like we're arguing back and forth. I like to think of, a sales conversation as really, like when you're trying to like close the elevator door, and then some person on like last minute, just as the doors are closing, hits it from the outside, and you're like, man, can we just go up? Can we just please go up?
Yeah.
But the doors can't close. You can't get in alignment and move forward, go up, unless the doors close. And so a yes, but, or an objection, those doors open up again. But a yes and brings those doors, together so you can go up. And I think that's the metaphor that, it comes to mind.
And it must be hard trying to teach old dogs new tricks with this, is it?
Amazingly enough, I've seen a lot of receptivity to it. I think a couple things have happened. I think, there's been a little bit of a shift in mindset. Improvisation has become less about, in the trade press, people recognize it's not about performing. It's not about being theatrical. It is on a stage, but in business, it's really about listening and collaborating and all the things that we do that we're able to make a great show because we have each other's backs. So how about if we did more of that listening and yes-anding in business? So people are recognizing, A, it's legitimate, it works. And also, too, I think you're seeing, I'm seeing a lot of millennials and Gen Y folks and Gen Xers, whereas boomers might have said, well, I don't know, I'm skeptical. I'm seeing a lot more Gen Xers and Gen Yers say, you know what, let's try it. And so there's an openness. I think at the same time, improvisation has kind of proved its mettle. I think there's more of an openness. The younger generations of managers coming up are like, well, let's try it because nothing else has worked. And this is not working. And salespeople want more skills that are going to make them successful. So salespeople are amazingly open. If you give them a tool that works, you and I both know that they're going to be using it.
Conversation building skills. And I think when you use the word storytelling, that turns it into a talent that they don't think they have.
Yeah.
Instead of knowing that every day you tell a story. How was your day? Okay, boom, there's a story, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's such a really good point, because I think a lot of like the sales people that I run into, and some of them are making complex sales, and we're talking B2B enterprise. So you know how that is. I mean, you got a lot of people involved. Like you got more people showing than like people showing up to Thanksgiving dinner, right? Like I didn't have enough seats at the table, and there's all these people showing up, and everybody wants to say, and then it protracts the sales process, and it's a complex buy, and it's a huge average selling price. So you've got a lot of complexities in the process. But what I'm finding is that you're absolutely right. More and more salespeople are saying to me, yes, we've had training, Kathy. Yet none of them have really answered the question of how we get this theoretical use stories in sales, but no one ever shows us how. And so, like, for example, I mean, it can be as basic as just showing people what words do you hear in a conversation that tell you that now's a good time to tell a story. But you tell a story not in, remember the time, sit down, I'm going to tell you a story.
Right. Let's get the s'mores out. Yeah.
Let's get the s'mores out. Let's campfire. And it's like, come on, kids, gather around. Grandma's got a story, right? It's like, and it's got to be organic and real and not like, not pretentious, right? And I think that those are the really basic stuff that I find that there's so much talent in the sales teams. All they need is really just a little bit of a template or some help getting there. And it can be really simple, actually. They don't have to throw out what's currently working for them. So this isn't going to replace what tools they're using. I think this is just going to make the current tools they use better.
I think you're right, because what we're looking for today in sales is a way to get the client talking so that we understand what they're going through, especially when you're not in front of them. The good part about being in front of them is you probably have a good half hour to an hour and to elicit that. But when you grab somebody on the phone or you have them on a Zoom, the level of urgency is kind of hanging over their head. And if you don't build rapport, you're not going to really hear the true story about what they're facing, what they're going through, and what's really in the way of them taking action.
Yeah, absolutely. And listening is the hardest thing. It's the hardest thing. I think we're not taught how to listen. And, it took me years of improv to figure that out, right? We all think we're good listeners. And yet, honestly, I mean, before improv, I look back and it's like, yeah, most of us live in our head with a response, but we're missing key things that maybe the buyers are telling us about their situation that, if we're really listening, we know that they're feeling fear. They're feeling some degree of doubt or uncertainty about their future there. And, certainly in Silicon Valley, I've dealt with clients where the average CMO or CIO or executive tenure is 2 years or less. So really, so they're making it's a revolving door. And when you know that, you understand on the other side, there's high perceived risk, job risk. There's not a lot of time to implement. And so all these things have to be taken into consideration in the conversation.
And how do you become a good listener? Is there particular exercises that you recommend? Books, because that is certainly one of the great skills of great salespeople, is being able to really hear what the person means, not just the words.
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. There's a couple layers of listening, and I know it seems weird at first. I know it is, because we as human beings are so uncomfortable with silence, like we got to fill the void.
Yeah.
The best thing we can do is okay, give it a beat after somebody, a prospect is maybe finished just telling you something important. I know it sounds basic, and we, people think, oh, I don't need to do this. If we say, I hear what you're saying, and yes, and I think your point about this, if we repeat it back, even in our own words, it does validate to the person in front of us we're hearing it. The other thing it's important to say, just say it, is a lot of times people will not come out and say that they're concerned. And I think it's important to call out the elephant, and it's okay. You can say, you haven't said this, but I'm getting a sense that this may be a rush because this factor, is this about right? And check for validation. Check for what is not being said, because the other layer of listening isn't what they're saying, it's what they're not saying.
That's the key.
It's the key. Yeah. And so just go there. And I have been in situations pleasantly surprised when pretty consistently, if I say, hey, here, you haven't said this, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, what I'm sensing is, and I'm bringing it up because I can see how that might add another layer to your decision making. Am I understanding correctly? And a lot of people will say, yes, that is true. And they'll validate that. Now I've got a piece of information that I need to move forward. And that's really important. You can't do that with a PowerPoint slide. So I say, get rid of the slides and really ask the questions about even what they're not saying. And I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, because I love that word sense, because it's typically a feeling.
Yes.
Right, and they may not even know it or be able to put it into words or even recognize it.
They may not. You're right.
Yeah. But if you don't talk about it, because what you'll probably find out is, well, my boss has other priorities. So I'm scared of putting this in front of him or her, and I don't know when to do it. I probably need some more ammo that I don't have. And I think that's when you get that switch from being salesperson, client, to being what I call partners in crime, where you're aligned on purpose.
Yes, I love
trying to
that.
accomplish the same thing from different angles.
Love it. I think you're right. And that's when it gets really good, because then when they get the sense that you're really listening and hearing what they're not saying, you're really, they trust you. That's when trust goes up.
Yeah.
And that to me is the single biggest factor in my experience when I'm talking to clients, where the turning point, where there's a turning point, because now they go, okay, that person gets that I'm stressed, or I'm in this situation, or that I've got to watch my back, and there's a credibility and reputation issue for me. And they seem sensitive to that. Now I feel like you get me and my circumstances. And that's when it is consultative, and it's truly collaborative. And now they don't feel like you're just trying to ram that past an objection. Yeah.
Yeah, because I always looked at trust as when you demonstrate that you care more about them than about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And part of that is them being heard, that psychological air that they give. I don't know if you've ever been to therapy, but like when you felt heard for the first time in a long time, you leave, 10 pounds lighter because there's monkeys off your back. Mm-hmm. And it's such a freeing feeling.
It is. And I guess in some ways a great salesperson is a therapist. You kind of are. I mean, you're kind of part bartender, part therapist. And in all seriousness, that's such a great apt metaphor. It really is. Because you're right. You're right. And I do think that when people really feel like, gosh, this person gets that I'm in a bind here, and they may not be able to articulate, just as you said it so well, they may not have words to it because they've not thought about it. But the minute somebody expresses concern and says, I get it, because I'm more concerned about this being right for you than I am making a sale. Then the total guards that swat away objections, and then all that shield just goes down.
Yeah, because without it going down, and without both of you getting to the real issues, the sales rep's going to be thinking, oh, it's just price, or it's just terms, or it's the competition, or this is the wrong person. No. You don't know. You're on like a black box. You're guessing. You're
guessing. And in a lot of the cases I've had those conversations, Brian, it turns out that trust was the number one factor. Trust and worry over their personal reputation. And when all we do is think about price, we forget that only satisfies their job requirement. What is on the line for every executive making a big purchase is their personal reputation. So if you can find a way to make an ally, we get it. It's your butt in the hammer. If this goes poorly, then there's a recognition that you're in alignment on the same things. You want to make sure that you mitigate their risk. Now you got their ear, and that little difference can make a huge thing.
Yeah. And I think too many salespeople get stuck in, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is how we compare against the competition, this is what you'll get out of it, and this is how much it costs.
Yep.
And if you stay at that level, you're a commodity.
You're a commodity. Yes. And here's my recommendation. Like, throw out the SWOT analysis. I'm just going to tell you right now, it's crap. And it's not because it's not a good SWOT analysis. So you get an A in MBA school, that's great. But a SWOT analysis has never persuaded any customer I've ever sold to.
Yeah. I mean, they'll use it to rationalize why they did it.
Right.
It's like, what's the rationalization for a Mercedes, right?
That's it. That's for the boss. That's for the boss.
Yeah, it's reliable. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The $400 oil change is reliable.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, Kathy, this has been a great conversation. Where do people connect with you and learn more about your work?
Sure. You can go to keepingithuman.com. You can find me at LinkedIn, Kathy Klote's Guest, also on Twitter and all that good stuff.
Excellent. I'll put all that stuff in the show notes. How'd you like that? Isn't that powerful? Ask your clients, hey, I didn't hear you say anything particular, but I'm just getting the sense that there's still something missing. that question will make them either correct you or elicit what they really care about. They may not even know. They may want to think about it. And that's what kind of thinking about it is they've got a feeling, they've got a sense, but they don't know what it means yet. They need to collect it. If you can get them to kind of articulate it and discuss it, not handle it like an objection, but to converse over it, to give it a good 10 minutes at the end of the meeting. Too many of us rush through. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is how we compare against the competition. This is what you'll get out of it. What would you like to do next? And the problem is they don't know what to do next. They don't know really how they feel about it, what they want to do, how they want to go about doing it. And there's a slight unease. There's a slight discomfort. And it may just be a feeling at this point, but if you can get them to talk about it, and then you can really get a sense of connecting with them. And once you have that, you have solid rapport. You build it into trust. And then you have someone you can talk with, not to, not at, but with. And that's really the differentiator between great salespeople and okay salespeople. That's why they will take your call. They will return your call because they know that you want to listen, that you want to help them, that you care more about them than about you, that you want them to make that right decision. This is where we want to get, instead of this trying to read their mind, their body language, which is all good. It's all part of it. And if you can develop those skills, that's great. But they do want to be heard. We all want to be heard. It's psychological air because no one really listens to anyone else anymore. Everybody just sits around waiting to combat what they're saying or have their thoughts shared because they want to be listened to. This is what we're doing as salespeople. We're really trying to get at the root cause of why they would change and how to help them make that change and to have them be honest with us. And a lot of it isn't that they're dishonest. They just don't know yet. But you'd like them to get there while you're there, meaning instead of waiting a day or a week or a month for them to be like, well, doubt creeped it in and other things became more important. It's not that we don't like what you do. It's just not at the top of our list right now. So that you can get in there and kind of help them get it to the top of the list. So it happens. And get out of this comfort zone called no decision or other. It doesn't matter what you label it. It's not an order. If it's not an order, you don't get paid on it. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed the interview. I apologize for a little choppiness at the beginning. Please go to b2brevenue.com where you get a free ebook on how companies buy. If you're in the courses, please check out the first chapter of each course. It shows when the office hours are and how to schedule one-on-ones. If you don't know about a one-on-one, it's a 30-minute Zoom call with me, and we talk about applying the course to what you're facing. It's totally anonymous. I don't turn the recorder on until you get your approval, and after I turn it off, we have plenty of time to talk about anything that is confidential. Otherwise, it's just your voice, and we're talking about applying it to a particular deal. There's tons of them in the course, so you get to hear other people applying the course, having success with the course. So it's a community, and you get somebody to talk to, somebody whose sole focus is helping you be successful. Now, isn't that fun? And it's all included. There's no extra charge for it. So make sure you're checking out the courses at B2B Revenue. If you'd like to talk about it to see if it's right for you, please self-qualify by listening to at least 5 podcast episodes. Don't just listen to one and get on my calendar. Hey, tell me more about the course. I get it. That's convenient for you. Not so much for me, because I'd like you to say like, hey, I'm interested. I need help getting into accounts, or I need help closing deals, and I'd like someone to talk to. Tell me how it would work with you. That's legit. And I think it's the right model, because then all the stuff is put back into the course, all the Q&As. all anonymously, but it's put back in so you get lots of case studies instead of just me randomly answering questions, hoping I understand what the question is. And you get unlimited one-on-ones. So feel free to contact me. And I'd really appreciate everybody's help. If you see my stuff on LinkedIn, please give it a like, comment, and a share. I've got a company page on LinkedIn, if you could follow that as well. If you see my content flying by, I really appreciate supporting the podcast by sharing it, telling a friend about the podcast. If you're a YouTuber or you like to watch stuff on YouTube, I put all the videos on my channel, Brian Burns Sales, on YouTube. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.